Hello, dear aspirants. During the course of my online interactive sessions that I'm having with candidates these days, something very interesting has come to light, and I've got to understand that most candidates have certain unnecessary myths about the selection process which they carry with them during their SSB, and it invariably affects their performance because it makes them conscious. So I've decided to create a series where every day we will be discussing about one task and we look at various myths that are prevalent in the environment about that particular task. So for today, we will be starting off with the first activity, that is the screening test, that is the day one. Now, in the screening test, there are two activities, you're aware, the OIR and the PPDT. Now, first myth which I've heard is that if you are able to do very well in your OIR, that you will make it in the screening test. And secondly, some people feel that if I have done very well in the OIR, as also I have written a very good story, I need not participate much during the discussion part and I'll easily be able to get screened in. Now, this is a myth because each task or each activity has its own value. If one wasn't required or one wasn't important, they wouldn't have had that task itself. So you should be aware that through the OIR, they're checking your IQ level. Through the story that you write, they are looking at your beliefs and your value systems. Through the discussion part, they're looking at how effective are you as part of the team. So each is important in its own way. However, if I were to rate them, I would say that the discussion part is the most important because that is when you are being very closely observed by the assessors and they're making up their mind. Then comes the story part, the story that you wrote. And thirdly would be the OIR. But if you look at it from another angle, you will see that if a person is bright, he will invariably write a better story or a good story. And if he's written a good story, that person will be confident enough to participate during the discussion as well. So that is how you got to look at it, and don't look at each of those activities in a compartment. Now, the next myth is that if my story is not matching with the group story, then I have no chance of getting screened in. Now, again, it's a myth because the story writing is not really, a test of your eyesight. It is a test of the way you would perceive what is happening in the picture. Let's say if there is a picture and you saw some windows and you thought those were looking like shops and your story is about a marketplace, whereas majority of the group feels that those were bogie wheels of a train and they wrote a story about, let's say, a railway station. So it does not mean that your story is wrong. So long as the story that you wrote was meaningful and it is revealing your awareness and your maturity and your connectivity with the environment, it is good enough. However, if the picture is showing some windows and you write a story of a forest, then naturally it shows that you're not talking about the stimulus that was shown to you. So perhaps it is a preconceived story in that case. Now, the next myth is that when the discussion starts, I should forcefully put down my story. And if my story is accepted as the group story, then I have greater chances of getting screened in. Now, again, it is a myth. Please remember that the story part, your story, has already been evaluated by the assessors when you read it out to them. Now, in the second part, they're looking at how effectively can you participate in this group and contribute in a manner where you help the group to compile the story in the allotted time. So therefore, so long as you understand that the group is going in a particular direction, there is no harm in going along with that, going along with the flow. However, if you feel that the story that you wrote was exceptionally good, so in that case, rather than saying that you accept my story, you could talk about that particular theme. So you could say that, gentlemen, I think in the picture, we did see some people moving about in vehicles So I thought it could be a marketplace. It may be worth considering that if you feel it is okay. So if there are not too many takers for that, then you go ahead with the story which the group is trying to make, and then tell yourself, if I were to make a story about a railway platform, how would I go about doing it, and make some standalone points, some very good points which nobody else has spoken so far. So that is what will again show you in a better light in front of the assessors. Then there are some other myths about the speaking part, where candidates feel that if I was the first person to speak in the discussion, that would show that I can take initiative and therefore I have greater chances of getting screened in. Now again, it is wrong. Initiative is not taking the first step. Initiative is taking the first step in the right direction and taking it to the logical conclusion. So long as you participate effectively and intermittently and positively throughout that activity, it is good enough. You don't have to start speaking when the noise level is very high and everybody is shouting on top of their voices. You choose the right time to make an entry, but when you make an entry, it should be a real good point which can create an impact on everybody in the group. So it is not necessary to speak first, but it is more important to speak when you will be heard by other people. Now the next myth is that if I speak more, I have a greater chance of getting screened in. Now again, it is wrong. It is not how much you speak, but what you speak, that is what is important. So make sure that you're able to understand the difference between these two, and whatever points that you're making are depicting that you are a well-informed person and you're putting them out in an articulate manner, in a manner that everybody can understand it properly and they're willing to accept the points that you're making. Next myth is that if I participate during the discussion and I have written some other story, and will it be okay that I change the story that I would have written? So please don't worry about what you wrote. What is more important is how you're going about discussing, and during the discussion you should emerge as a person who is effective as part of the team. Next myth is that repeaters have lesser chance of getting screened in or making it. Now it is partially correct. However, you have to understand that they are not concerned with how many times you've been to the SSB. They are looking at you as a fresh candidate and they're going to focus on you and look at you, and if you've been able to iron out all those things which you felt were inhibiting you from making it, and you've been able to improve your personality and you've been able to work on those gray areas, definitely you will have a good chance of making it. If you in fact check the records, the statistics from the Army headquarters, you will realize that more numbers of repeaters make it every year vis-a-vis freshers, if you look at the overall statistics. Now the last myth which I have heard candidates talking about is that if I speak loudly, will I appear to be an overbearing person, or will I be looking like an aggressive person? Now again, please understand, it is not the volume, but it is your body language, the tone and the tenor in which you put out your points that will make you aggressive or otherwise. So aggression does not mean that you're speaking loudly. So long as you have a smile on your face, you're connecting with the group and your body language and mannerism is pleasant, it does not mean that you are being overbearing or aggressive. Also, I've heard candidates saying that somebody in the group was very aggressive and he was not letting other people speak, and he got screened in. So that is the way out. So again, it is not very correct, because you must understand the difference between being aggressive and being assertive. So aggressive person is the one who will not listen to other people, who's a bad listener, and he is overbearing and he only wants to listen to his voice, and he's not helping the group in any way. He's just speaking for the sake of speaking. Whereas an assertive person is the one who's sensible and who is firm and friendly at the same time. He is a good listener and he'll be able to help the group to compile the story. So he may be heard more often, he may be speaking more often, but that does not mean that he is being aggressive or he is being overbearing. It basically means that he is contributing more effectively. So you must understand this subtle difference between aggression and assertiveness. Last point which I would like to highlight here is that a lot of candidates also feel that, if I give out the final group story, I have greater chances of getting screened in. Now again, it is yes and no, because if you are a confident person and you do a very good job of giving out the final group story, yes, it will go in your favor. However, if you stand up and make a hash of it, and till now the assessors were not sure whether they want to screen you in or not. They thought that you might have some spark. So by making a hash of the final group story, by narrating it eventually, you could probably clear their mind and they would say, okay, fine, this candidate need not be taken. So it can be counterproductive for someone who is not so confident about himself. So this is a measured call that you can take. If you can do a good job of it, by all means, you must stand up and give out the final group story. So these were some of the myths that I thought or I heard from the candidates, which I've clarified with respect to the screening test. Next time, I've in fact on purpose not touched upon the story writing part, because there are too many myths about the story writing part, which I would like to cover in my next video, where I will be talking about the TAT stories, the myths about TAT stories. And since the story writing procedure is by and large similar for both PPDT and TAT, so I thought I'll cover the myths over there. So I hope you enjoyed this. Continue to follow me on my channel, and I will be posting many of these SSB related videos in times to come. Thank you so much. All the best.